right, my beautiful friends. We just pressed the Let's Go Live button, and so we have to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the interwebs. Before we go ahead and get started, we got to make sure YouTube fires up. Rumble is online, and our friends on Locals are here and with us because, my friends, you know what day it is. It's a beautiful Friday. Welcome back, my friends. We're very glad that you're here and with us. We've got a heck of a show planned. We're going to get into some good business today. Fresh filing right out of the oven in the Alvin Bragg case is where we're going to start the day off. Then we'll talk about this drone situation because we've got some more letters that are being sent now from the governor of New Jersey and from senators of New Jersey and New York and everywhere. People are saying, what are these things flying around? We know that John Kirby said that if you saw those, then you're just seeing things and you're deluded. But maybe there's more to it. So we'll go through that. Apparently something crashed over there in New Jersey. There's a rumor about that, and we'll have some updates there. And then we'll talk about Pelosi, because it's Pelosi versus AOC in Congress as AOC runs for certain committees. Pelosi says she doesn't want her to be in charge of those committees. And then Nancy Pelosi fell down some stairs right after that. So we got some backstabbing in Congress and some difficulty walking in Congress. So we'll get into it, my friends, but I'm very glad that you're here and with us. Let's just get right to it, shall we? I see our friends on YouTube are here. Hello, Mr. Trump Train, Ike's Girl, Shane Souza, M.A. Allen's in the house. Locals is with us. Good evening, my friends. Happy Friday. First Amendment, Mama Bear, Dana, Londo, Sergeant, good to see you. Sadie's joining us. And now we can get into the business since we've confirmed our friends are here. Now it's time to go. Trump's nominee to work at the Department of Justice, Todd Blanche, is obliterating Alvin Bragg, one of the remaining prosecutors who was still trying to go after President Trump, wanting to sentence him, even though he's been reelected to the White House. And we've gone through Alvin Bragg's big 82-ish page response to President Trump after the election. Remember that Judge Merchan in the 34 false business records case has postponed the sentencing. There were guilty verdicts, but the sentencing has not occurred. Trump said, too late, case is over. Trump is transitioning into the White House, so you have to stop. Alvin Bragg said, no. We have to keep this thing on track. We're going to have sentencing, or we can just hold this case off until Trump leaves the White House, and then we'll just pick it right back up. And we read through it, and it was a bunch of just, from Alvin Bragg. You know what type of competency comes out of that office. But now Trump is responding, and it's a 23-pager, and so we'll go through it in some fine detail. Now, let's see who is drafting this for the president. We know who they are. Todd Blanche and Emil Bove going into the DOJ as number 2 and number 3. Now, want to keep that in mind as we're going through this, because when they use a word like obstruction, when they say Alvin Bragg might be obstructing, that carries a little extra oomph to it, since they're going to be, running the Department of Justice in like a month. It's going to be great. So we're going to see what they are intimating as this goes forward, courtesy of President Trump's defense team. They write, all right, Judge, President Trump is here replying to support our motion to dismiss this entire case. And their original filing said, we want this case dismissed immediately. And Alvin Bragg came back. He said, well, how could you say immediately? How could you say that? You can't say that. Well, Trump is saying, we are demanding it immediately, reiterating their demands. Here's how they start. All right, Judge Merchan and Alvin Bragg. President Donald Trump respectfully submits this reply, and this is the final word. So it was Trump's original motion. He moves first. Alvin Bragg moves second. Trump hits the final reply. In further support of our motion to dismiss the indictment and to vacate those jury verdicts that were verdicts of guilty. And we're responding to Bragg's filing that we read earlier this week. Now, on December 11th, Democrat Senator John Fetterman, you know him, not long ago, reposted an article about Alvin Bragg's opposition on Truth Social with the following comment. Fetterman's on Truth? It was his first one. John Fetterman went over to Truth Social and he said, here's my first truth on here. He said, the Trump hush money and Hunter Biden cases were both BS, and pardons are appropriate. Weaponizing the judiciary for blatant partisan gain diminishes the collective faith in our institutions and sows further division. Well, pretty articulate there, John. Now, as to President Trump, Fetterman's summary of Alvin Bragg's behavior is apt. So Trump's people, we don't have anything to do with Hunter's case. I don't care what his position is on Hunter. We have no skin in that game. So, all right. Call David Weiss, Biden's own DOJ, I guess. I guess you can call Biden's own prosecutors BS. All right, whatever. Fine, whatever. But what he's saying, a senator is saying, Alvin Bragg is weaponizing the justice system in the Trump prosecution for hush money. Whatever, it was the false business records, right? It was paying off Stormy Daniels. It was a spreadsheet crime because he didn't write the appropriate classification in or something. No one knows. Even the jurors don't know because they could pick whatever they want. So Alvin Bragg's brief includes a request that the court disregard the New York Court of Appeals and fabricate this unconstitutional abatement law, remember? And we were making the distinction. Trump is saying this case must be dismissed. Dismissed versus terminated. Trump wants it dismissed. Alvin Bragg wants it terminated. He actually wants him sentenced. But if he can't get that, his backup plan B was, how about we just use this abatement thing? Like if you die, we can do it. If you die, Trump's not dead, but our ambitions are dead. And so it feels like our souls are dead. So maybe we can pretend he's dead since you think he's probably dead, Mercon, you know? So just make it terminated. They say, what the heck is that? You're going to fabricate this unconstitutional nonsense? You even admit it, that it's not constitutional. There's no law there that allows you. He admitted it when we read it earlier in the prior motion. This is all based on an extremely troubling and an irresponsible analogy between President Trump, they're going there, let's do it, who has survived multiple assassination attempts, and you're trying to make an analogy that this is like a case where somebody just drops dead? Irresponsible Alvin. You should know better than this. And he will soon be the only person who alone composes a branch of government. And a hypothetical dead defendant is who you're comparing him to? Now, that unhinged contention, Alvin, demonstrates conclusively that Alvin Bragg is a sick person, and the District Attorney's Office of New York cannot be entrusted to separate their political motivations and their career ambitions from their obligations to seek justice. Now, Bragg has no credibility left in these proceedings at all, and they must be terminated immediately to prevent additional constitutional and legal violations. Trump's defense continues. Deputy AG Alvin Bragg, Associate AG Emil Bove coming in, saying immediate dismissal is necessary, and it needs to happen now. As president-elect and the soon-to-be president, judge, there can be no further criminal proceedings against President Trump at all. Such proceedings interfere with the ongoing transition process, including preparations that are necessary for President Trump to effectively carry out constitutionally designated functions. Therefore, under the Presidential Transition Act, immediate dismissal and a vacature of the jury verdicts are necessary. So just shrip those up like Nancy Pelosi in Congress with those official records. Alvin Bragg did not address a single word of the Act's text when he went through his little whiny response previously. Since 1963, Congress has prohibited, quote, any disruption to the transition process in order to avoid the harm of the safety and well-being of the United States during a period when the president-elect is arguably making more fateful decisions than he will have to make after he's sworn into office. He's building his whole team right now. They put that into the congressional record when they were having these conversations back in 1963. Now, the Transition Act reinforces the doctrine of sitting president immunity because, as the law clearly says, the president-elect's transition activities are integral and they're preparatory to his imminent actions as president. He's in training season. It's like that whole sequence in Rocky, man. There's a lot happening. Everybody's flying all over the place. Trump's running up and down stairs. DA Bragg's obstruction of this congressionally mandated federal function, and see that word there? Ding, ding, ding. Alvin Bragg's obstruction. Oh, yeah, that's right. It is obstruction, isn't it? It certainly feels obstructive. And you know what else it feels like? It might also be interference. And it might be interference with something like the peaceful transfer of power. Yes! Eureka! Obstruction and interference happening right now with the peaceful transition of power by the Democrats. Let's see where this goes. And that obstruction impedes upon the federal functions, and it imposes dangers of intrusions on the authority and the functions of the executive branch that Trump is preparing to assume on January 20th. President Trump's extensive transition activities, which are happening right now, for example, are choosing his cabinet, meeting with world leaders, preparing day one executive orders, and other policies. These are all integral to the official conduct as president. Now, Congress and the Office of Legal Counsel and all other reasonable sources recognize that all these are all-consuming tasks that are necessary during the short transition period, and that these undertakings are critical to the national interest and our national security. And Bragg's conclusory assertions to the contrary transgress Article 2 of the Act and the Supremacy Clause. And they are inciting, we'll come to it. Now, Alvin Bragg's feigned ignorance of the Supremacy Clause demonstrates the importance of the constitutional restriction on biased, incompetent prosecutors. Now, Alvin Bragg purports to be confused, I don't know how this works, about the operation of the Supremacy Clause in this setting. He says, well, it seems that President Trump's position appears to be based on intergovernmental immunity. Okay. Are you confused, Alvin? Here, let me explain this to you. Alvin Bragg's mischaracterization does not reflect the law. Let me educate you. The Supremacy Clause is a key part of the basis for applying presidential immunity to prevent these improper local proceedings from interfering with the sanctity of the electoral process and the functioning of Trump's executive branch. Federalism and comity support the same result, right? In this comity word is this friendship between, look, we're in the same country, okay? We're federal government and the state government. We have this dual system, but we're also friends. Now, since at least 1879, courts have repeatedly refused to let biased state prosecutors like Alvin Bragg and Fani Willis and Tish interfere with federal officials and their official functions. In Vance, a Supreme Court case that worked its way up through the Second Circuit and the DOJ emphasized these concerns as particularly forceful when we're talking about the presidency. And even Alvin Bragg recognized that the operation of the Supremacy Clause, he wrote, was, quote, very analogous to the separation of powers problems that arise in federal immunity cases. So we do have to protect the presidency against certain impediments, right? He was recognizing that because in his filing that we talked about previously, He agrees while you are the sitting president, you can't prosecute him, right? Because of the impediments and the shackles that it puts on the executive. Now, Trump cited the same authorities back in July, Your Honor, when he submitted a motion to dismiss to you. Now, in response to that motion, when Alvin was responding back then, he didn't suggest any confusion. So now all of a sudden he's confused. He doesn't know how this works. Now he disregarded nearly all the same cases that he already referenced, wrongly mischaracterized the arguments as relating to, quote, intergovernmental immunity, and relied principally on tax burden case law that is not even cited in Trump's motion to address their straw man. This is good stuff, man. So you created a bunch of things that we never talked about, right? In other words, you said Trump is pulling on intergovernmental immunity. It appears Trump's talking about intergovernmental immunity. No. It may be that this is a tax burden case law. We're going to cite these cases. We're not talking about taxes either. We referenced the Presidential Transition Act, which you didn't reference. You didn't even talk about. We talked about the Supremacy Clause, which you ignore. And these other cases that are just not part of your analysis. So the court, do not be misled by this weak parlor trick from these goons, even on Bragg's own terms. It would, quote, directly obstruct the activities of the federal government. He wrote in his filings for this court or for his own office to impose restrictions on President Trump. He admitted it. Then now he's confused. Now the prohibited obstruction, there it is again, bing, 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 resulting from these local proceedings in violation of this supremacy clause includes any type of sentence as well as a continuation of the gag order. Because Trump is having his rights now limited. He can't speak about this judge and this judge's daughter and their Democratic alliances and how the judge made donations to Joe Biden and to stop Trump organizations, and how the daughter was saying the father didn't like Trump's tweets when he was the president, and how the daughter made millions of dollars for her company when she was fundraising off of the prosecution that her daddy was operating in New York. He can't talk about any of that. And he was duly elected by the American people to execute the duties of the presidency, and he's transitioning into that role right now. So if he is being gagged and silenced during this process, his actions are being interfered with. Some might even say insurrected. And that violates President Trump's extraordinary power under the Constitution to speak to us. Now, presidential immunity, as we know, categorically forecloses further proceedings here, Judge. Alvin Bragg conflated distinct strands of presidential immunity upon you. In an error that pervades their entire brief, Alvin conflated two distinct forms of presidential immunity because he can't keep them straight. Current and former presidents are immune from prosecutions that are based on or involve evidence relating to their official acts. And remember, this Trump prosecution allegedly involved payments to Stormy Daniels, or it did involve payments that were allegedly to her. They say it was to her. He says they were not. They were to his lawyer, and Michael Cohen, the perjurer, was paying off the porn star for whatever reason. And they were blaming Trump for a mislabeling of something in those payments. Basically the memo item for legal services, but it wasn't. It was for campaign services or something. Don't even know what it was, because that wasn't criminal according to the feds. Anyways, we can spend a lot of time on that. But the point is, the checks that were written, the entries that were made, all of it was done by Trump's hand, largely from the White House during his time as president. So you at least have to have a debate about that. Was that signing of that check, that specific check, was that an official act? Could you make an argument that it was? Because the president has to juggle multiple things at the same time, including paying his lawyers for his personal stuff. So in those three buckets that the Supreme Court delineated for us, you got to decide, where do those fall? Maybe they're unofficial. But we'd never had the conversation, so you can't just presume and decide, well, they're all unofficial. That's illegal. Now, Alvin violated this form of immunity in grand jury proceedings and again at trial. And in addition to that, and distinct from this is official act immunity, sitting presidents are absolutely immune from all phases of criminal proceedings, regardless of whether the proceedings are based on official acts or unofficial acts. All phases. As a president, it stops. Thus, for purposes of this motion, Alvin Bragg's false claim that their case is, quote, wholly based on unofficial, right? And we knew, you said this when we were reading this. That's their position? I don't think so. Is wholly based on unofficial, not official acts is irrelevant. The burdens imposed on a sitting president by the initiation of criminal proceedings, whether for official or unofficial wrongdoing, are unacceptable. They violate the Constitution. So once he won, this whole distinction went bye-bye. Doesn't matter. Okay, he's the president now. He can't be prosecuted. And he's transitioning into that role. So you're done. Enforcing, the people vetoed you. You understand? Enforcing sitting president immunity by vacating the jury's guilty verdicts and dismissing this case doesn't render Trump above the law in any way. In fact, this motion affords all due respect to that well-worn phrase, which is rhetorically chilling but wholly unjustified. It's a stupid phrase. No one's above the law. Clearly, the Democrats have a bunch of people that are above the law, including the judge that Joe Biden that was selling kids to prisons. The federal Constitution, which guarantees presidential immunity, is the supreme law. So abiding to that is above Alvin Bragg. So we're actually following the main law, not Alvin Bragg's hack construction of New York law. Now, under that Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, Alvin Bragg cannot impede President Trump's sweeping powers and duties. Accounting for that reality and ensuring that the president may exercise those powers as the framers anticipated doesn't place him above the law at all. It preserves the basic structure of the Constitution from which the law derives. Alvin is the one acting out of constitutional order, not Trump. And even Jack Smith agrees with this, Alvy. The DOJ dismissed it. Well, we'll read this, and we have our skeptical, ulterior motive opinions about why they were dismissed by Jack Smith, but let's see how they're using that here. Todd Blanche, Emil Bove, writing for President Trump, continue. They say, listen, Judge Merchan and Alvin, let's be real. All right. Alvin, Jack Smith, even he is not a real prosecutor. Even he dismissed it. It reflects a proper application of a categorical bar on criminal proceedings against Trump. Nothing in their submission from the feds suggested that Bragg's claims about procedural and substantive differences, which is what Bragg cited. He's like, well, mine's different than his because like we're a state and he's fed, so it's different. Well, nothing in Jack's dismissal said, well, we could continue this if we only had these differences. No. Bragg now seeks to distance themselves from Jack. Jack's running away. Everybody wants to distance themselves from Jack. He's probably screaming for pardons right now, along with the rest of those crooks. Everybody wants to distance themselves. And they're still trying to distinguish between official and unofficial acts. Okay, well, Bragg argues that Jack's prosecution was based on Trump's official acts. He says, well, mine wasn't. And claims, contrary to their grand jury and their trial record, that their case is not. Remember, the trial was riddled with official acts evidence and testimony. They had two official government witnesses who worked for Trump come in and testify. This contention overlooks the fact that Smith recently devoted 165 whiny pages to arguing that his DC prosecution was not based on official acts either, right? It was so not based on official acts that he spent 165 pages explaining why it wasn't based on official acts, you know? What do you need a full book for to explain it, Jack? I mean, if it's not based on official acts, what's all this explaining for? Oh, it's clearly on official acts. It's clearly based on it because it's your second draft, mind you. Remember, he had the first indictment, which was filled with official acts like Trump talked to his attorney general. Trump talked to the DOD. You're like, hello, he's the president. Weirdos, he's allowed to do that. Then they stripped it all out and they still were having him talk to Mike Pence, and that was part of it. And then they had to do a second draft of the indictment, refile a superseding indictment, and then they're arguing it on that. No, but that's still okay too. So they're just calling them out. It's great. Although Trump disputes Smith's arguments, the salient point is that the DOJ's dismissal was not based on concession of official act immunity. No, just the opposite. Saying the prohibition on this is categorical. It doesn't hinge on whether it's official or not official. It's categorical and doesn't turn on the gravity of the crimes charged or the strength of the government's proof or the merits of the prosecution. The people vetoed you. The Constitution requires this case be dismissed before Trump is inaugurated. That's what Jack Smith said, okay? The DOJ interprets it this way. So, Judge, you better get on board with that interpretation because the federal government says that. Don't come back and say, well, this is different because it involves Stormy Daniels and Cohen and personal payments to a personal lawyer. And all. Nope, doesn't matter. Trump's arguments relating to the supposedly temporary nature, Bragg's arguments relating to the temporary nature of Trump's immunity does not support a different disposition. Regardless of whether the immunity is temporary, the DOJ and the Office of Legal Counsel have rightly recognized that Trump's immunity currently applies to him now. It precludes ongoing criminal proceedings, and it requires a dismissal. They said the proper balance supports recognition of temporary immunity while the president remains in office from the criminal process. Now, nothing in the analysis of this issue by the executive branch or the courts suggests, as Bragg does, that presidential immunity turns on whether pending proceeding is advanced or not. The required vacature and dismissal are not unduly prejudicial to any valid interest of Bragg. Okay, they failed to timely achieve their political desired result. They initiated this lawfare campaign 6 years ago, and this was based on record entries that harmed nor deceived anyone. All standard stuff. And so Bragg, he has to be bound by their concessions in another case. Now, in addition to the force of DOJ's conclusions about Jack Smith's case, Bragg is bound by their previous concessions. In another case, Bragg conceded that there were two distinct forms of presidential immunity that are relevant to this case. Bragg said this: "We're mindful that as a state actor, as a prosecutor, our office cannot investigate a president for any official acts and that we cannot prosecute a president while in office." They wrote that a while ago. That's what the DOJ said. And they've been saying that since 1973. Thus, the posture of this case is not any different. They made that case up to the Supreme Court when they were filing their petitions there. He also acknowledged that courts are empowered to shut litigation down where cases have real burdens on the presidency. That's what's happening now. This year, the Supreme Court issued a binding decision concluding these burdens are unconstitutional. And so, sorry, Judge Merchan, Your Honor, you must now do what even Alvin Bragg conceded when he was filing his positions during the appeal. And you see how they're flip-flopping? This is what's been so fun on this case, is they haven't had a safe position. Remember that Jack Smith kind of wanted to leapfrog the Court of Appeals to get that decision on his case rendered quickly. Then the Supreme Court kind of backhanded him and slapped him back down. Everybody's filing, just saying whatever they could to get the outcome they wanted. Now they're switching their position because Trump won. And they're just calling them out, saying, well, you wrote in your other motion that you can't do this. Now you're saying you can? Alvin Bragg conceded that Trump has immunity. He said it. And his opinions were well-founded and inescapable back then. Sitting president immunity requires Trump not to be subjected to any criminal proceedings, right? And their arguments, like they were conceding part of it. They're like, well, when he becomes president, then we have to stop. but he's not president. So this is the line. And so, well, now the line has been crossed and he won. So now what? Got to eat those words. So their prohibition is categorical. The Constitution does not permit a, quote, practical inquiry into what Bragg says will happen after the presidency or happen during the term. Bragg lacks any qualifications to even make a guess. The court cannot put the country at risk based on Alvin Bragg's jaded crystal ball as Bragg looks ahead to his next election. Now, the OLC has come with a categorical rule consistent with the Constitution that doing a criminal process and proceeding here is perilous. Now, when the Supreme Court has engaged in balancing to weigh presidential immunity versus public interest and more, it has done so based on the type of proceeding at issue, but not the case-specific posture. So it didn't really matter where we were at the case. It was the type of proceeding. Doesn't matter if we're early in the case or late in the case. Fitzgerald was at an advanced stage. There were 4,000 pages of testimony. In other words, it doesn't matter that we're just like 1 inch away from a sentencing. Okay, Bragg's like, we're so friggin' close, man. Just let us sentence him, please. It doesn't matter. Too late. Vance was based on 200 years of precedent about subpoenas and other things, and so it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where we're at. It hasn't happened, and now you're done. Finally, as with other opinions and other courts' reasonings about Trump's immunity, this decision is based on institutional considerations, not timing considerations, and so it is a categorical bar. Now, Alvin Bragg went through, and in his filing, he said this is not going to be that big of a deal on Trump. So one of the reasons we don't want this to happen is because we don't want prosecutors to burden the presidency, as we've been reading. Alvin said, well, it's not going to be that big of a burden. Let's just say we're not going to put him in jail, and that'll be good enough. Then he won't have to worry about it. And if he's not worrying about jail, then it's not really a burden, and so we can continue on and come back with sentencing after the presidency is over. But they say that's ridiculous. That's not a minimization of the burden. Trump's immunity and the corresponding prohibition on any criminal proceedings targeting a sitting president is based on 3 burdens: sentencing threats like going to jail, a stigma, and distraction from official duties. And could you imagine if we just had to like deal with Mercan sitting there like, oh, I wonder what Trump is doing today. I can't wait to see him 4 years from now when he comes back to my courtroom. And Alvin Bragg and all of them like, well, we're going to pick this back up, hanging it over his head for 4 years, having to deal with this crap? No. Bragg gives impermissible short shrift to each. Okay, this is a big burden. First, Bragg carefully avoided acknowledging that Trump cannot be sentenced right now. He can't even admit it. It is clear that incarceration is out of the question. So don't even think about it, Judge. It's out of the question. Nor may Your Honor impose any restrictions or disqualifications that would apply during Trump's second term. Even potential criminal liability are unacceptable. Nor can New York impose any form of probation on Trump, which would also cause unconstitutional burdens arising from liberty restrictions, the threat of revocation and further probation violations, which are new criminal charges, and associated penalties with that. So you cannot even penalize him. And second, Alvin is wrong that the only relevant stigma that results from the, quote, initiation of criminal proceedings matters. Well, everybody already knows he's been charged, so like it's not going to get any worse for him and already been found guilty. So it's only from the start. Since this is a continuation, it's not a problem, which is so idiotic. It's like, are you okay, really? Then just dismiss it, right? Because you've already accomplished your goal. You just initiated it. So whatever happens at the outcome doesn't matter, right? Because the stigma is already attached, moron. There is a peculiar public opprobrium that attaches to criminal proceedings at every stage. Yes, at every stage. Bragg's post-trial emphasis is on irrelevant and disputed allegations like in the Bergdorf case with E. Jean Carroll, who says she got Bergdorf in a dressing room at Bergdorf's. It helps to illustrate why that is so. It's also obvious, as the Office of Legal Counsel says, that stigma arises not only from an indictment, but also from the need to respond to those charges throughout the process. Now, Bragg will undoubtedly amplify the stigma arising from these proceedings. If Bragg is allowed to just pause the prosecution and bring it back, he's going to make it a point every day as he's running for re-election to say, you know, as soon as Trump leaves, we're going to prosecute him again, and I need to be the guy to be here to do that. There's a serious stigma here. And if he can do that, that's going to seriously interfere with Trump's presidency. And third, Alvin Alvin says, well, we can just come back for sentencing as soon as the presidency's over because we need to continue fighting these. And he says there's no burdens that are going to need to fight these because it's basically over. They say, what? No. Every point of every criminal case requires every defendant's personal time and mental preoccupation. Yeah, Trump is choosing to continue to fight this. So saying, well, Trump can choose just not to fight it and worry about it and just bend over and take it. No, they say Trump is going to fight it. He does choose to fight this on every single front, Alvin, until your pathetic display is put to an end. It is Trump's constitutional right to do so at each step along the way by fully participating in his defense, as he has from the outset. Now, Alvin makes a peculiar constitutional argument by suggesting that the president's ability to do his job should not be disrupted because Trump could just waive his constitutional rights and just go and plead guilty. Now, the Constitution should not lightly be read to put its chief executive officer on such a notice and such choice. And that stage, the advanced stage of this case, heightens and does not diminish the risk of interfering with his role. Just because we're almost close to the end doesn't mean anything. In fact, you get more tense. You're going to be sentenced. It's like, you're going to go to jail? What? Bragg's claim that a defendant likely feels greater apprehension about the future actions of a prosecutor than during subsequent stages is indicative of their complete lack of awareness about the catastrophic and historic failure of their weaponization of the justice system. The irresponsible and at times unethical behavior by Alvin Bragg and his underlings has only increased over time. No participant in the defense against this unprecedented abuse of criminal justice system is less concerned today than we were a year ago. To the contrary, it is abundantly clear at this point that Alvin will say and do anything, including urging the court to disregard the Constitution, the New York Court of Appeals, and the Second Circuit to try to make this abomination stick. The threat of a potentially imminent sentencing in front of psycho Judge Merchan, my words, increases the need to devote attention and urgency to each motion that is necessary to further demonstrate how lawless these proceedings have been since the inception. That threat enhances the risk of distraction from the president's duties, which are of unrivaled gravity and breadth. Now, Bragg's arguments to the contrary diminish the crucial role that a defendant plays in the design and the presentation of his own defense, and they disrespect the criminal justice system that Bragg has failed to protect. Trump's defense continues, writing, Alvin Bragg's politically motivated interests don't override presidential immunity, saying his interest, which is like, we have to just maintain the jury's verdict as a notch in whatever belt he plans to wear for his campaigning in 2025, is no basis to interfere with the executive branch. Bragg quotes a Bond versus U.S. case, saying that, quote, traditional state authority includes punishment for local activity. Well, suffice it to say that, dating back to 2018, this case has been anything but traditional, Alvin. Trump's motion does not require the court to assume that Congress has meant to effect a significant change here between federal and state jurisdiction. Nobody Neither Congress nor the Supreme Court has ever tolerated disruption of the executive branch in favor of a local prosecution. Never happened. Here's cases that show that. Likewise, the Second Circuit also denied Alvin Bragg's request that federal courts abstain from the dispute in a subpoena in advance. And so thus, even if Alvin had proceeded in a matter with the public interest in fair and effective law enforcement, which he hasn't, that consideration would not justify casting aside immunity, which is designed to protect the presidency. The balance of competing interests requires recognizing presidential immunity because that process, otherwise being prosecuted, impedes and burdens the presidency. Now, they continue telling us that Alvin's little accommodations, remember Alvin was like, well, how about we just agree we're not going to put him in jail? And then Trump won't have to worry about going to jail. And then that's good enough. And then if you don't like that, how about we just pretend like Trump is dead? And then we can just terminate the case because there's no law that allows us to do that in New York unless he's dead. So just pretend he's dead. So they say, look, these accommodations are unconstitutional and totally lawless. Bragg's so-called accommodations, anything short of a dismissal of this case, are a strained effort to position their zombie case like some ghoul in a late-night horror movie that repeatedly sits up in its grave and shuffles abroad after being repeatedly killed and buried. Alvin Bragg and Tish James. Bang! Popping up. This zombie case must be put to rest. The zombie case, which started in 2018 and it involves decades-old false allegations, cannot simply be stayed until Trump leaves office in 2029. Bragg's proposal would violate not only presidential immunity, but also due process, the Sixth Amendment and the Eighth Amendment. Bragg asked the court to hold the case in abeyance and claims that the appellate courts could do the same, but the Office of Legal Counsel recently rejected that course of action based on 50 years of unquestioned analysis. They concluded that a grand jury shall not be permitted to indict a sitting president, even if all subsequent proceedings were postponed. Still can't indict him, sorry. Trump would be legally stigmatized. That's in violation of the Constitution. And the proposed stay would not do anything to help that. And their conclusions are grounded in reality. They're pretty compelling. Bragg offers no persuasive reason to avoid them. Staying the proceedings against Trump during the second term would impede the presidency. It would give New York County intolerable leverage over the executive branch, which exists for the protection of the entire nation, not to be worried about what Judge Merchan might think about Trump's foreign policy. Alvin and the court have asserted wrongly and without any evidentiary foundation that their gag order is still necessary too, insurrecting Trump's free speech as the president-elect of the country, not a private citizen anymore. Continuation of that unconstitutional prior restraint during the course of this hypothetical stay would result in this court and Bragg policing Trump's constitutionally protected speech, authorized by the Constitution, on threat of mid-presidency imprisonment and other unconstitutional penalties as well. Now, in addition, if we just pause this, it would require President Trump to lead the country while facing the ongoing threat that this court and this Democrat-donating judge are prepared to impose imprisonment, fines, and other punishment the moment he leaves office. Now, to be clear, President Trump will never deviate from the public interest in response to these thuggish tactics. However, the threat itself is unconstitutional. In other words, Trump doesn't buckle or bend to any threats, doesn't even think about it. But the fact that there is a threat alone, even though it doesn't impact him at all in any way, shape, or form at all, period, it's unconstitutional by virtue of its existence. Under the Presidential Transition Act, under the Presidential Immunity Doctrine, and the Supremacy Clause, because it would exacerbate the stigma and the distractions and the burdens above. And so, for all these reasons, Bragg's accommodations of staying the case until Trump leaves has no legal basis and is completely unacceptable. Now, let's talk about their little fantasy land idea of Trump being basically dead. Now, here's Bragg's dark dream scenario. Why don't we just pretend Trump is a dead man and use abatement by death? It's not an option, Alvin. Nice try. As a further illustration of Alvin's desperation to avoid legally mandated dismissal as required under the law, Bragg proposes that you, Judge Merchan, pretend, just make believe, as if one of the assassination attempts against President Trump had in fact been successful. Bragg also thinks, he says, quote, "It makes sense for Your Honor to pretend that the court is in Alabama, too." These abatement arguments are absurd. This court is bound by the existing case law surrounding abatement. In New York and at least 13 other states and federal courts, abatement is effectuated through the remedy that President Trump seeks. The indictment must be dismissed. That's how it works. This isn't Alabama. Apparently feeling unburdened by what has been, oh, Todd! Apparently feeling unburdened by what has been in New York's Court of Appeals, Alvin Bragg asks Your Honor to make new law contrary to binding precedent. Oh my gosh. Judge Merchan just flipped over his whole friggin' table. He's reading this. He's already hot. He's reading this right now in his chambers. His court clerk is just waiting there. She's already read it. She knows what page he's on. She can tell by the tension in the room. And then she hears all of a sudden the table flip. Gavel flying all over the place. Judge effing this, Liz Cheney, effing Ted Thompson, all colored, losing his friggin' mind because Todd Blanche twisted the proverbial knife. Apparently, Alvin and Your Honor Kamala fans, you guys are all a much more unburdened by what has been, aren't you? Setting aside stare decisis, which would be precedent, there is no good reason to do that. Now, states that have departed from this practice have expressed concern about the impacts of abatement ab initio on victims' rights. What happens if you just terminate it? What happens to victims? Here, however, it is not seriously disputed that there are no victims to even be concerned about. Worse still, in Alvin Bragg's abatement wonderland fairyland, the proceedings would not be subject to appellate review because whatever's happening can happen. Who cares? It's Alvin's land. Welcome. Next stop, Tishville. Incredible. And so wrongly suggesting that appellate proceedings could merely be held in abeyance. Oh, they're making it like hurt so bad. Merely. What do you mean merely? What does that mean? Is there like a standard in there just because you think it's merely holding a whole case in abeyance? Like not a big deal for you? Thus, Bragg has casually suggested that the court enter an order that violates President Trump's, quote, fundamental right to appeal. Well, forget it. Who cares? One would expect more from a first-year law student, Matthew Colangelo. And this is yet another indication that Bragg's opposition to this motion has not been undertaken in good faith. Now, the court cannot resolve this motion by violating President Trump's sentencing rights. So don't even think about it. Now, Alvin also asks Your Honor to impose, quote, certain limitations on a hypothetical sentencing that they're making up, that the court lacks authority to conduct. This judge has to be so mad. I can't even imagine how mad he is. He by this point, and I really like how Todd and Emil have done this. They're warming it up. So now we get to the point about sentencing, and he's saying, by the way, you can't even do it. You don't even have the authority to do this. So we'll just continue to talk about like this fantasy, but Judge, you're done too. So just so you know, but we'll write a paragraph for you, even though you can't do it. So we'll just read this for you. The proposal lacks any legal foundation at all. There is no basis for any court including this one, Democrat dono judge, to disregard the significance of President Trump's extraordinary leadership as a public servant. The fact that there can be no sentencing is a fact in order here, where President Trump's service to the American people would be a significant mitigating consideration. Now, furthermore, and particularly in light of the existing evidence of bias, conflicts, and the appearances of impropriety, it does not blunt President Trump's concerns for Bragg to suggest that the court simply disregard Trump's second term in office so that a 2029 sentencing can happen. The prospect for even an implicit bias to President Trump at a future sentencing threatens to impact his decision-making. Now, as noted above, even though Trump would never succumb to such a pressure, the threat alone is an unconstitutional intrusion on the executive branch. Now, that prospect is not, as Bragg suggests, some sort of trivial inconvenience. That is a grave and impermissible danger to the effective functioning of a second Trump administration that will be protecting the public across the nation from January 25 to 29. And finally, Bragg's suggestion that presidential immunity, while not requiring dismissal, should nonetheless require some other non-incarceratory sentence, only sheds more light on their completely unprincipled position. Bragg is correct that there is not a single thing about the zombie case that has ever warranted even the prospect of incarceration, of President Trump at least. But presidential immunity is not, as Bragg claims, a constitutional limitation on the range of available sentences. The doctrine is a complete defense to even the possibility or the danger of its outcome. Absolutely no condition, none, may be imposed on President Trump's liberty, as such restriction would be to the detriment of the country. The Constitution does not tolerate any impediment like that impedes the function of the government. And so the rest of the factors support dismissal as well. The foregoing immunity considerations that we just discussed, that alone is sufficient. It requires that our motion be granted and the case be dismissed. But we're just going to pause here and also go through these various factors and show you how dumb Alvin is. Now, Alvin does not dispute that there was no financial injury. There wasn't. And their aggrandizement of the zombie case with rhetoric about the sanctity of the electoral process, unquote, the integrity of the marketplace, it all rings hollow. They cite no evidence to support those claims, which amount to a concession of preemption error because Bragg improperly applied state law with respect to election to the federal office. Bragg was prosecuting a federal crime that the federal government and federal prosecutors did not pursue. Now, while it may be true that other people face consequences, those other proceedings are consistent with the conclusion that this one is not serious. Michael Cohen may have been in other problems. Doesn't matter to us. Bragg contends, he says that Pecker and AMI were found to have committed knowing and willful violations of federal law. Okay, but they weren't prosecuted. They made a deal. The same U.S. Attorney's Office that issued a non-prosecution agreement to AMI and required Michael Cohen, perjurer, to plead guilty, they declined to charge Trump. Now, Bragg's inaccurate claim that the evidence was, quote, overwhelming, proceeds by crediting the testimony of their serial perjurer star witness, Michael, in a weak and unsuccessful attack on President Trump's character, which is ridiculous. Bragg devotes 4 pages of their brief and a 115-page compilation of social media posts to confirming that they have no regard for the First Amendment at all. Bragg's discussion of politically motivated lawfare by Tish, who takes her shoes off, and E. Jean Carroll, who talks about her cats and blue painted trees and all sorts of other things. We can't say the words now. Who got allegedly Bergdorfed, even though nobody has any real evidence of it. All of which is currently being challenged on appeal, provides no justification for this case. So the fact that other hack New York people are being hacks in New York doesn't matter here. There is no empirical evidence for Bragg's argument that this case has or will in the future will result in any meaningful general deterrence to crimes out there. If there has been any deterrence to speak of, it arises from the manner in which Bragg approached this case and how it has deterred public trust in a system that Bragg is supposed to administer. Dismissing the case will benefit the public welfare by removing unconstitutional impediments on President Trump, who has been duly elected. Bragg does not dispute there are no victims, and the real victims here are the taxpayers and the people supporting the salaries of Bragg and the nine prosecutors who signed the opposition brief, all of them working on this, rather than focusing on escalating violent crime in the city like CEOs getting shot in the back. Therefore, none of Bragg's additional arguments outweighs the need for presidential immunity, which has been articulated. And Trump's arguments are not procedurally barred either. The Sixth Amendment provides Trump with carte blanche to file whatever motion he feels necessary. So he can file this, and he's doing that. And by the way, Trump's commanding victory in 2024, all 7 swing states and the popular vote, constitutes good cause for arguments to the same extent as others. The court would be abusing its discretion by finding otherwise. Whoa. Don't try it, Judge. Now, Bragg's lack of respect for Congress and the Second Circuit is not persuasive. His insistence on rushing through unprecedented circumstances and front-running federal courts getting ahead of them. Remember, Jack was prosecuting his cases and he brought his forward earlier. Has consistently led to significant problems, and that flawed strategy threatens the same result here. The Supreme Court has already criticized the, quote, highly expedited proceedings, racing to get him, that has led to erroneous and unconstitutional applications of the presidential immunity doctrine. Your Honor, you, Judge, must heed that warning. This is your final warning, because the court's next steps could result in the enfeebling of the presidency and our government. And as with the Supremacy Clause, Alvin Bragg professes confusion about why an intervening from you, Judge, would render the Second Circuit appeal ineffectual. One of the reasons we wanted to remove this is to vindicate Trump's rights and presidential immunity. That's why we took it up. The Second Circuit appeal is pending, okay? It's not hypothetical. You cannot ignore that. We are moving forward on that one as well. If this court issues a presidential immunity decision before the appeal is resolved, Trump will be denied his rights. And therefore, it will be the Second Circuit appeal is resolved. It will be resolved. Now, this approach does not involve improper federal interference with state proceedings either. So Alvin Bragg saying that this would impede on their rights to redress their criminality. They say Bragg has failed to address any of the Second Circuit stuff. And so accordingly, if this court makes a mistake, if you choose error by not granting this motion, we're going to ask for a stay of your decision for 2 weeks because Trump is going to pursue federal injunctive relief. This is not a speculative request, okay? If you issue an order in opposition to what we've written, we ask for a stay because we're going up to the feds. It is an effort to preserve every procedural mechanism available for Trump so he can continue his transition preparations without lawless Alvin Bragg burdening the peaceful transition of power, insurrecting Trump's transition from a prosecutor's office. Now, for the foregoing reasons, Trump now says that this court should immediately dismiss this indictment and vacate the jury's verdicts, signed by your friends Todd Blanche and Emil Bove, coming in hot to the DOJ with a beautiful filing, my friends. And as we mentioned, there's a lot of very keyed in language here and some just beautiful proverbial backhands, including a lot of people in Alvin Bragg's office being unburdened by what has been with a prospective Kamala presidency. So I'm sure that was painful, but we did hear some of the words in here: obstruction and abuse of discretion and error, right? And hinting that Alvin was doing a bunch of unethical things and that they are operating with requests that are adverse to the law, in opposition to the law. Pretend Trump's dead and just dispose of the case accordingly. Great filing from Trump's defense. Of course, we're going to be here waiting for the judge to issue a ruling. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do, my friends. When that one drops out, we'll be here to unpack it. But I think this judge is going to have no choice but to dismiss this case or to come up with some sort of termination to end it. I don't think this judge can reasonably hold this case until the end of his term. He's been looking for an off-ramp. Alvin Bragg is trying to scramble to keep this case on track, but based on the fact that the Supreme Court, this case was already in a dire situation based on the immunity decision from the Supreme Court because they introduced immune evidence at trial. Now that Trump is the president and those new powers of presidential immunity come swinging back in, he's protected on both ends of the equation. He was immune going into the case. Now he's immune coming out of the case. The judge has to dismiss it. But dismissing it, especially after this motion, especially after Todd Blanche was just poking him this whole time, this judge had to read this whole motion. You don't have the power, judge. Dismiss this case, end this, and then we'll see and consider your cooperation when the DOJ does their obstruction and their abuse of office investigations and federal prosecutions for conspiracy against rights. We'll be here covering that too, my friends. Hopefully join us as we do. All right, my friends. So that was a good segment on that one. That was a fun one to read. Shout out to Todd Blanche and those guys. All right. So now let's change gears a bit and talk about what's happening in Droneville, because this is another interesting case. And I believe, yeah, we've got a bunch of letters. All right, so here's what we've got. We got one of these letters queued up here from the governor. Drones causing officials to scramble. Authorities now sending letters to President Joe Biden, like he's going to do anything. Don't even know if he knows what a drone is or what they are, other than looking at them. What are those lights in the sky, Joe? All right, come back inside, Joe. So he gets a letter from the governor of New Jersey, and a bunch of other individuals from the Senate are sending letters to Alejandro, Christopher Wray, and Michael Whitaker at the FAA. And so we'll go through these letters, but there's also new reports that something may have crashed there in New Jersey, and people are scrambling to go figure it out. And I also came across this clip from this guy called Andy Kim, who is a New Jersey senator who is out there with police watching these things flying around. And so there's been a lot of videos out there that may or may not be credible and so on. But this guy is a senator, a state senator who is there, was there with police watching the footage, watching the drones. They're talking about it. So we'll come back on that. But here's the background on this, because they tell us that there's chatter, and now Governor Murphy's sending a letter to Joe Biden that we'll read. The governor is saying that there are ongoing sightings. People are freaked out. Now, earlier in the day, okay, here's the thing. Earlier in the day, law enforcement in Somerset County in New Jersey, they investigated a report of a drone hitting a power line. And so people were wondering, is one of these downed? Chopper 2 flew over the scene near a Lowe's parking lot where multiple agencies could be seen combing a wooded area. Like they're like, oh, dang, man. So they're going to go get the drone, like multiple agencies. Like, we got one. Now, the FBI said it's aware of the incident, but could not provide any further information. Hillsborough police said they did not find any drones and the scene was cleared. And so no dangers, no known threats to the public. Now, meanwhile, elected officials on Staten Island, they held a news conference. I've got that queued up. And a bunch of people are saying, let's start to be honest with the American people. Feds are also pressing for details. We see senators are sending the letters. And so let's jump into these letters. You see, this one is going to Joe Biden. To President Joe Biden, as though he can do anything about it. Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey sent this one. They say, yo, Mr. President, hello. You're still the president. Now, I write with growing concern, sir, about reports of unmanned aircraft systems in and around New Jersey airspace. Now, as you are aware, UAS had become a standard, maybe UAs, had become a standard feature of American life over the last decade, used by hobbyists, researchers, and for commercial purposes alike. The proliferation of this technology has introduced additional risks to public safety, homeland security, and more. Now, since November 18th, New Jersey police have received reports of UAS sightings in our airspace. Existing laws limit the ability of state and local law enforcement to counter UAS, and at my request, Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas briefed my administration and our congressional delegation on actions the agency would take to learn more about the reported UAs. Now, his team, as well as your Homeland Security Advisor, Dr. Elizabeth Sherwood Randall, have been exceptional partners in trying to unearth the cause of these reported sightings. A team from the FBI has been leading the interagency investigation, and we are appreciative of their attention to this matter. Now, while I am sincerely grateful for your administration's leadership on this concerning issue, it has become apparent that more resources are needed to fully understand what is behind this activity. This week, the FBI testified in a joint subcommittee hearing before Congress that the federal government alone cannot address UAS. New Jersey residents deserve more concrete information about these sightings and what is causing them. The continued reporting of this activity has raised more questions than answers and prompted an outcropping of conspiracy theories across social media and other platforms. Where is the conspiracy coming from? We have Congress people telling us that Iran was flying a mothership. Like, is that real or not? Then the State Department came out and said no, and the DOD came out and said no, that's not happening. So you guys keep saying you have no evidence of anything. Can you tell us anything? So the governor is like begging the president. I respectfully urge you to continue to direct federal agencies involved to work together until they uncover answers on what is behind these. I've directed the state police and our Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness to assist them in any capacity. And yesterday we were asking the question, what resources do they have to just send somebody up and just blow it up? And can they do that? And of course, you amazing folks were telling, oh, Rob, hello, the National Guard. So now he's got the state police looking into it and Homeland Security Preparedness, but maybe not the National Guard. In addition, I have supported your administration's efforts in asking Congress to give us more money and power to look at these things. I am encouraged by the consensus that Congress is building around this, which will be necessary as New Jersey prepares to hold the World Cup in less than 2 years. We don't want drones falling on our heads. As always, I stand by to help. Sincerely, Patrick Murphy, the governor of New Jersey. Philip Murphy, governor of New Jersey. Now, this is what it sounded like when a state senator called Andy Kim, New Jersey senator, public servant, dad to 2 troublemaking kids, and he's there serving. He says, last night I went out with local police to spot drone flying over New Jersey. Here's what I saw. We drove to Round Valley Reservoir and the officer pointed to lights moving low over the tree line. Sometimes they were solid white lights, others flashed of red and green. Here's a thread. So here's one image of this.
Oh, I feel like they're gonna crash.
Yeah.
What, are they passing each other?
I've never seen that before.
Wow, they just passed each other.
Yeah, I've never seen that before.
Are we getting taken over?
That's a little crazy.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
That's really convincing.
Yeah, they are. They're coming this way towards Round Valley.
Oh, they are getting closer.
Mm-hmm.
How about anything about the one that supposedly went down over here by Mount?
All right, so that's video 1. He says, we oriented ourselves with a flight tracker app to help us distinguish from airplanes. We often saw about 5 to 7 lights at a time that were low and not associated with aircraft we could see on the tracker app. Some hovered while others moved across the horizon. Here's another short clip.
Weird, 'cause that's just in the middle of Round Valley.
Yeah, that one right straight ahead.
Yeah, but what are they doing? We have family down, well, my son's going to college down the shore, and,
Different
right
lights there. All right. Strange, right? Kind of following in a sequence. Then he continues, State Senator. We saw a few that looked like they were moving in small clusters of 2 to 4. We clearly saw several that would move horizontally and then immediately switch back in the opposite direction in maneuvers that planes can't do. This is a senator and cops all out there.
the one low looks pretty close, right?
So this one's gonna fly over us right now.
You think so? Cocaine for
It's hard to get a good shot of what it.
guys, come over here. There's like a couple that are gonna just fly right over us. There's a couple that are gonna fly right over us. The one low looks pretty.
All right, so interesting. Now it continues. The police officer said they see them out every night. They only seem to start when it gets dark and they disappear before dawn. They get reports that they sometimes fly over low over homes, especially up in the hills. Here's another scene. Okay, and we continue on. He says the officer said they've tried to get closer with the use of a helicopter, but that the drones would turn off the lights and go dark if they approached. The parking lot at the reservoir had a number of cars of people coming to take a look for themselves. Several shared with me their own stories of having seen them some up close. One described them being the size of the hood of a car. You can see here, a group of people out there. I went to multiple locations across Hunterdon County to get different vantage points. There is a more rural part of New Jersey. It's uncertain why this is a more rural part of New Jersey. It's uncertain why it's one of the more active areas for reported activity. We are seeing reports through other parts of the state. Any images or video footage people get, the police urge them to submit them to the FBI, but I haven't gotten any follow-up yet from the FBI on their investigation and what they've compiled. Homeland Security briefed last week on new technology they were deploying, but we need details on what those efforts have yielded and if more resources are needed. If they haven't fully identified the devices yet, we still should know what is being done. This has gone on for weeks. It's hard to understand how with the technology we have, we aren't able to track these devices to determine the origin, and this makes me much more concerned about our capabilities more broadly when it comes to drone detection and countermeasures. Yeah. Now, I'll continue to track these developments and share as much as possible to the people of New Jersey that deserve more answers than they're getting. And yeah, I have a guess that the government knows what they are. They're just being coy about it. You can watch John Kirby. They're all saying dumb things like, we have no evidence, okay? At this time, there's no evidence that these drones pose a public safety or national security threat. It's the dumbest thing you've ever heard, because if they don't know what they are or where they came from, that is a national security threat. That is evidence alone. But the governor said, we know New Yorkers have spotted drones in the air this week and we are investigating. At this time, there's no evidence that these drones pose a public safety or national security threat. We are coordinating with our federal partners, including the FBI and Homeland, to protect New Yorkers. And okay, that's great, like FBI and Homeland, all right. What about every other branch of the DOD? What about Space Force? What about all of the other components? FBI goes, we don't know what they are. DHS says, we don't know what they are. Meanwhile, it's some Space Force bros up there chilling. This is great. No one knows what the hell is going on here. So we already know that they can't even talk to each other to protect the Capitol building, for crying out loud. They can't even communicate with their field offices and their confidential human sources, which is why we had 23 of them who were not authorized to be there, but who were there on January 6th. And over a dozen of them went into the building, or went into the restricted area, rather. So she says they're coordinating with the people who know nothing about anything to figure this out, so don't hold your breath. But there's another letter that went out. So as you can see, they send them to Homeland. Alejandro can't even identify human beings coming across a border. Okay, so can't even figure that out. Can you figure out what's in the sky, Alejandro? No. He's had about 31 million opportunities to identify and stop human beings from coming across the border. Can't handle it. So drones are way above board. It's like, are you kidding? No. Christopher Wray, he doesn't even care. Okay, he's out of here. He's like, these go right. Yeah, though, put those in the will respond letter pile over there. Just gets bigger every day. And the FAA. Don't know anything about Michael Whitaker, but if he's on the same letterhead with these two, he's probably, you know what I mean. All right, so we write out of urgent concern. Here's who's writing this. Kristen Gillibrand, Cory Booker, Charles Schumer, and Andy Kim, United States Senator. Oh, that was a U.S. Senator? Wow, I didn't even realize that. I thought that was a state senator. Mea culpa, my friends. That was a United States Senator, New Jersey Senator, not a state senator. All right, that's like an actual senator. I mean, not to diminish the state senators, but like a U.S. senator. That's a big deal. And he's demanding now answers along with the rest of them. So we got New Jersey and New York, all 4 senators sending this letter to these people. Says, we write out of urgent concern regarding the unmanned aerial system, UAS. And it's a weird, how do you say that plural? The UAS? The activity that has affected our communities across New York and New Jersey due to the ongoing nature of these drone incidents. We request that Homeland, FAA, and FBI brief us as soon as possible on how your agencies are working with federal and local law enforcement to identify and address the source of these incursions. And I mean, it's like it's a bunch of agencies talking in circles. They're not talking to the people who are doing it, obviously. As you know, since late November, communities across New York and northern New Jersey have reported several incidents of unattributable drone sightings at night, alarming both residents and local law enforcement. According to public reports, residents have reported some of these drones are larger in size compared to other commercially available drones. Some of these drones have been seen maneuvering near critical infrastructure, sensitive locations like reservoirs, military installations. Now, in addition to potential privacy concerns raised by these flying overhead, they're concerned about how drones may harm public safety, especially given recent reports that a medevac helicopter was prevented from transporting a seriously injured patient because of the presence of these drones. Now, the potential safety and security risks posed by these drones in civilian areas is especially pertinent considering the recent incursions at military sites. And we read through the charges against the Chinese national who was here in California flying drones over the Space Force base. Protecting civilian infrastructure and safety and military assets will require a comprehensive response from Congress. So they're going to want more money, I guess. For this reason, we request that the briefing you provide also include any authorities, tools, or staff you may require to address these ongoing incidents and broader security challenges posed by the UAs. This is a demand for money by these Democrats. How much money do you need before we leave office? Exactly, right? Just let us know. Then we'll pass over some money your way. Now, we'll see where it goes. This was what some of the Staten Island lawmakers had to say today when trying to figure out what the heck's flying over them. Here's the couple clips.
And the people of Staten Island, deserve answers. The people of this city and state and region deserve answers of what the heck is going on. Just last night in my neighborhood, my neighbor sent a video of whatever it is flying over our house. And yet we're told, don't believe what you see. It's shocking to us that here we are almost a month later, 3,000 sightings, drones, manned aircraft, and our folks don't have an answer. We're calling upon not just the New York City Police Department, but others to get involved, get aggressive, figure out what these things are, and help at least alleviate some of the frustration, anxiety that many people share. This is 2024. They're either lying or they're incompetent or they're both. How can we, the United States of America, have this going on and we're told just look the other way? Ignore it. It's no big deal. We know for a fact that there may be some who are, performing some type of surveillance. Well, let's be honest with the American people and treat them like adults and tell them what it is. Yet here we are, standing, because we know recently there were reports over this asset, the Arizona Narrows Bridge. Here we are in Fort Wadsworth, one of the oldest military installations in the country. There was, we believe, a drone flying above the bridge. We also know on the other side of the island there was a drone flying over New York Container Port in the Goethals Bridge. And we're supposed to just let it be? Come on, folks, step up to the plate and be honest and truthful with the American people, the people of Staten Island, and solve this problem once and for all. We're in this together. I know we have many folks around this region who are weighing in now. It's about time. We started a couple of weeks ago asking that, along with the Congresswoman, to include at least Staten Island in any investigation that's going on at the FAA and the FBI. This is not to take away from them. They didn't start this problem, but they have an obligation to let us know what the heck is going on. As I said, we're all in this together, and representing us in D.C. and Congress is our Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis.
All right, so a lot of frustration there and not many answers from the federal government. We'll see if these senators get any answers, or if somebody just... Can you just throw a net over it or something? Somebody can figure it out. I'm sure they're working hard on it, and we'll see where it goes. But lots of panic, lots of scrambling afoot from all of these officials. They can't even figure out what's flying over their heads. All right, my friends, now we got one final update on the day, and then we're going to hear from you. Nancy Pelosi backstabs AOC in a fight for Congress. You can see that she's making phone calls trying to, quote, tank AOC's bid to run the House Oversight Committee. Fun reports on this one. And what's so interesting about this is right after Nancy Pelosi was making these phone calls to try to tank AOC, she decided to fall down some stairs and is now in the hospital. And it's not good, because she's 84 and she fractured her hip. So Nancy Pelosi is just on a tear, trying to rip down AOC and then doing cartwheels down a flight of steps. So here's what the New York Post has for us, telling us former House Speaker Pelosi launched a behind-the-scenes efforts to thwart AOC's bid to be the top House Democrat on the Oversight Committee. Now, she's 84. She wants another representative called Jerry Connolly, who's a Democrat from Virginia, to serve as the ranking member, and is actively working to tank AOC's bid. Now, we don't know if AOC was at that event. We do have some photos. Was somebody giving Pelosi a nudge down that flight of stairs? You can see here is Pelosi. She was today at an event. The U.S. Embassy in Luxembourg posted this, says, "We welcome Bill Nelson and members of Congress to come over and join us. The sacrifices of World War II soldiers echo from the past, reminding us," we love our World War II, man. Okay, reminding us, great. So Pelosi is there. Each generation must fight for freedom and democracy. Does that mean electing Trump or what? Anyways, so here you can see Nancy Pelosi is there, and people have noticed she looks like she's hanging on for dear life right there, doesn't she? It's like, oh my goodness. She all right? What's happening here? Kind of squeezing that arm pretty tight. That's kind of the arm, that's kind of a Joe Biden squeeze, right? You're like, don't fall over. Don't fall over. Well, she did. She fell over. And we hope she heals up quickly. We don't want anybody to be injured or taken out by a flight of steps. So that was one scene. Now, I went back and saw some other posts from Nancy, and some people wonder sometimes when Nancy's falling downstairs if she might have had a little bit too much to drink, you know. And I came across this. Ambassador Geraldine Byrne also posted this one not long ago. She's on her trip and says, I'm delighted to have met with Nancy Pelosi, an honorary Irish woman. Shout out to the Irish. Now, each time I meet Speaker Pelosi, I'm reminded of the decades of commitment she had made as a U.S. leader to peace and prosperity on our shared island. And then Nancy Pelosi, if you're asking about intoxicating beverages, people are just noticing, you know, people are just noticing. We don't really know if maybe she's feeling a little sauced up over there when she's in her homeland. But she was walking up the flight of stairs and fell down the flight of stairs, and we genuinely hope she's okay and heals quickly. Former speaker was hospitalized on Friday, being injured. She was there in Luxembourg. Sustained an injury is what the official statement said. Brief statement, no details on the nature of the injury. She was admitted to the hospital. But here's what the Times reports. She tripped going down marble stairs at the Grand Ducal Palace and took a hard fall. So was it those stairs, man? Was it that flight of steps right there? Man, those are some serious steps. And there's a rug there. So I wonder if it was a traction problem. And those steps look pretty wide, by the way, too. Not narrow steps. I mean, look at that. They've got a whole people standing there behind those steps. So, but they're long. I don't know where she was on the top of them or not, but here they say, according to a person familiar with this who is not authorized to comment on this, people close to Pelosi said they were not authorized to speak for her. They said she fractured her hip. Ugh, that's bad. They said doctors were confident the damage could be repaired with a routine operation, not clear yet whether that would be done in Luxembourg or in the U.S. Speaker was traveling with colleagues to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge, man, and that is a good thing to commemorate. After her injury, she was set to miss the remainder of her official engagements. Statement said she's receiving care. She's 80-something years old. McConnell fell earlier this week and cracked his head open with a small cut to the face. But it wasn't before she tried to stab AOC in the back. Now, AOC is facing a slugfest over the oversight role, and we didn't see AOC in that footage. Was she in there somewhere? Is she back in there somewhere? Maybe she's hiding behind this door or something. No, there's Susan Collins from Maine, not AOC. Well, did she push her down the stairs? We don't really know. But she's facing strong headwinds. Senior Democrats say that while Ocasio-Cortez is the favorite, the race is still in play. The fight comes as several septuagenarian committee ranking members are facing desperate battles. Younger people are challenging them. Ocasio's 35, Connolly's 74. They're facing off to replace the current ranking member, Jamie Raskin. Punchbowl, where's Raskin going? Punchbowl News was the first to report this, and someone for Pelosi didn't comment on this. So Pelosi coos out Joe Biden, and now she's trying to coup out Ocasio-Cortez. Very racist. That is something that their steering committee will discuss next week. Several younger Democrats are trying to squeeze their way in. Raskin succeeded in getting Judiciary Committee. Okay, so Raskin's going to Judiciary because Jerry Nadler's stepping down. Huffman from California fighting Grijalva from Arizona. And Melanie Stansbury, younger, So the Democrats are trying to figure it out. Meanwhile, who knows if AOC is pushing Pelosi down the stairs or what happens. But we do wish her a quick and speedy recovery because we don't want anybody being injured or taken out by stairs. So we'll be hoping for a speedy recovery there. And we'll be watching this battle unfold because it sounds like it's war. AOC versus Pelosi in Congress. We'll be here for it. Thanks for subscribing, my friends. We'll see you back here on the next one. All right. And so, my friends, it has been a beautiful day and a beautiful stream. If you're just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about today. We had a good segment on this great Alvin Bragg motion that Trump's team sent in response to his demand to keep the sentencing until Trump finishes his presidency so that they could come back as soon as Trump's done in 2029 and put him in jail. Trump says you literally cannot do it. And if you try, you might be obstructing the peaceful transition of power, my words. But that could also, some might say, be insurrectionary behavior. Time will tell. So it was a fun filing. Definitely rewind the clock on that one. Todd Blanche is explaining how they should never be burdened by what has been and more. It was a good one. Then we talked about the drones. Senators and governors are like, can you please tell us what the hell's going on? We have federal senators who are also making video recordings and now sharing this with us. So if you're like, well, maybe those videos are from a video game or maybe they're fake or something. This is a senator who is out there with the popo trying to figure it out. And then we saw Nancy Pelosi and AOC are going to duke it out for the power in Congress, and Nancy Pelosi fell down a flight of stairs. And now, my friends, it's time to hear from you and see what you have to say about all of this. It's a beautiful Friday, and we're glad that you're here. Hope your week was amazing, and your weekend is proving to be a lot of fun. This is going to be our last live stream from this location. Let me say this. With this setup, we'll be back in this building. But we're packing up, and on Sunday, we're moving to Prescott. And then next week, we're coming back. And so AmFest, my friends, AmFest is happening next week. We are going to be there on Media Row. We have a booth. It's going to be like a 10 by 10 booth. So we're just going to be packed in there like a little closet. And we're going to be grabbing everybody to talk, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to be in Media Row at AmFest all 4 days. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're going to be live streaming like mad. We are going to, it'd be amazing if you came because we'll be able to break out and come say hi, what's up to everybody. We're going to post, it's not there yet, but we're going to post a bank on the lodge at watcherlodge.com. So it's not there yet. If you go over there, you're not going to see it. I just got the idea. So that if you're going to AmFest, you can sign up over there and we'll have a little directory. And you can be a part, we can open up a chat. You can post pictures and I'll post updates. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm doing so that we can keep it all separate for people who are not there or who are not interested. So we'll come back on that, watcherlodge.com. I'll work on that over the weekend, maybe when I'm not moving. So we'll get it settled. We'll get it settled. So next week we can hit it and we can all get together while we're there and then maybe figure out how to meet up and stay connected, have a directory and so on. So amfest.com, check it out. Trump is going to be speaking there. It was a huge surprise. Really glad we got a booth when we did because we were already like the last ones in. They were already sold out basically. She's like, you're like the last one. I'm like, woo, that's how I roll, baby. And we got it. So we'll be there. It's going to be fun. And if you're there, come join us on the lodge so we can get plugged in and all the watchers can congregate at the lodge. Not there, not done yet, but we'll get it up there. All right. And so, my friends, want to thank our amazing mods. Thank our mods for clipping for us and holding the fort down for us all week long. Playing hooky, Donut Mind Me, K-Bean, Carrie B. They were clipping some donos, John McGarvey. And let's see what we've got in the house, my friends. It's a beautiful Friday. Thank you for being so generous and fun. And look who's here. Oni. What's up, Oni? Oni became a membo. And we had a great members-only stream this morning, too. If you're looking for a little bit more content, then become a member because we do streams in the morning. We're going to have a members-only stream tomorrow on Saturday, and then we're going to pack up like it's nobody's business, and then we're moving on Sunday. So that's the plan. So Become a membo, my friends. We had a great stream this morning. We really tried to deliver for our membos. This morning we talked about Luigi, about The View. We talked about, what else did we talk about? Some other good stuff. It's a lot. There's a lot to cover. So come check it out. Oni, glad you joined us. Just Rhonda. Good to see you, Just Rhonda. Very nice to have you aboard as a membo. I know you've been a membo for a long time, but welcome aboard officially here. Ike's Girl, what's up? 10 months a membo. Says, received a blessing today. 30 years waiting. Best Christmas. Well, congratulations on that, Ike's Girl. Don't know what it is specifically. Thanks for being a member for 10 months. Glad that you received. Merry Christmas to you. Thanks for being here and for sharing that with us. Spud says, Nancy versus Sandy Cortez. Battle of the pom-poms from Spuds. Thank you, Spuds. Brent Brocksmith. What's up, Brent? Hey, thanks for becoming a supporter, my man. We'll see you tomorrow on the members only stream. And Sergeant GPS. Oh, I saw this one. Sergeant GPS. Hey, guess what, America? Time justice is coming soon. And I want to speak for all Arizonans when I say you're welcome for this movement finally reaching maturity. The president has now declared unequivocally that the Republican Party will use its best efforts to eliminate daylight savings time, which has a small but strong constituency. But shouldn't! Daylight savings time is inconvenient and very costly to our nation. And it should be banned immediately. We don't observe it here, as you've noticed. Everybody changes their clock, but not us. Dang it. And soon, we're going to liberate the rest of you from whatever the hell you do with your clocks. I have no idea. All I know is it forces the show to change times for 49 states, or whatever it is, twice a year. Drives me nuts. We don't change the clock because this is America. All right. Good to see you guys. Love you. All right. We'll see you. We'll see you on the other side of time, liberty, and freedom. Welcome back. Hey, Sharpie guy says, all right, we're good, Rob. We're good. All right, Sharpie guy, we've been sending some emails today. We're good, Rob. I definitely appreciate your efforts. Still, brother, perhaps it is by plan to gain more subscribers, but don't you think there should be a little heads up for gifting members on YouTube? I still haven't figured out how to get my family to check out Watching the Watchers YouTube, short of driving 863 miles to hand them $10. But just to show you I've no hard feelings and believe that you put out decent and valuable content, I'll gift 10 more random chatters. Sharpie guy, what a nice thing of you to do. Yeah, we don't, I don't, give a PSA or instructions at the start of every show. I understand your point. You didn't really know how the membos worked on YouTube, and you got duped and blindsided by YouTube. And I actually do agree. I wish that YouTube had some functionality so that you could gift a specific person a membo. Like, that'd be very useful for me. If you could just say, hey, Mom, I'm going to get you a year to Rob's membo on YouTube. Can't do it as far as I know. Got to get them a gift card, and then they can spend the gift card. On locals, you can. You can buy somebody a specific gift card to a membership, but not on YouTube for whatever reason. So when you buy memberships on YouTube, it's like a slot machine. It just gifts them out to everybody who's in there. Now, I could, to take some constructive criticism from you and say, it's not my plan to gain more subscribers by duping people into becoming members or to buying members, because quite frankly, I'd rather not have these conversations where somebody's upset about it because they feel duped. So it's not my prerogative to do that. But it's also not my desire to, at the start of every show, explain how everything works at the start of every show. So it's kind of like a buyer beware situation. And I know that puts the responsibility back on you. But if I have to explain how super chats work and all this stuff at the beginning of every show, then it deviates from the show. And I'd rather just get right into it. So it's just kind of a learning thing, I think. And I think we're both learning from this experience. And I appreciate you sharing this. And I'm really grateful for your support one way or the other. And I'm glad we're able to rectify this. and become friends again. And we appreciate your support, Sharpie guy. It's good stuff. Yeah, because YouTube, I mean, I've done that. I learned the same way you learned, Sharpie guy, by the way. I think I bought like 150. So my thought process was for the own channel, I bought like 150 membos. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do is just hand these out, like hand them out. And then it just give them all out at once. And I was like, wow, that's how that works. And I learned it that way. Fortunately, I think it was for our own chat. And everybody's like, we all got membos. I'm like, hey, that's great. So it worked out well for our end. But I learned the same way. I had no idea how it worked. So anyways, thanks for doing it, Sharpie guy. Sorry for the frustration your way. I don't want this show to be a frustrating experience for anybody. I want you to come here and leave bursting with joy and enthusiasm. The real joy, not Kamala's joy, because they don't have any of that. Anyways, thanks, Sharpie guy. Appreciate it. Hey, Sharpening Man in Texas delivers. Here he is. Chat Litter, Lisa B, Haley's Comet, Words Mean Things, and Stevie Fair gifted membos courtesy of Sharpie guy in Texas. Sharpening Man in Texas, man. Good to see you. Thank you, Sharpie guy. Great to have you here. We got this one from Mach Schnell. Says, Robert, great show these last few days. I never get to listen to you live anymore because I work 8 a.m. to 4:30 Monday through Friday. Well, you in Arizona? Because that time might be changing because of Trump saving us, liberating the country from daylight savings. Been listening to you for over a year. Great work. Keep it up. Love the membership. Thank you, Mach Schnell. Well, I'm sorry you can't make it live. Maybe once the clocks change again, maybe will that shift anything one way or the other for you? Hopefully it does, but I really appreciate that. Thanks for that. It's an honor to be with you while you're working or on the way to work or when you're coming home from work. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mach Schnell. Waldo gifting a membo over to the Thrive Tribe. The Thrive Tribe. Jody says, hit that plus button. Hit that plus button a lot. For Rob, like it owes you money. Hit it like it owes you money. Oh, golly. All right, Trump's coming to Phoenix. Trump's coming to Phoenix. We're going to be there. So we're going to be there. We're going to have a booth. Go get your tickets because it's probably going to sell out, I would imagine. I don't know how many tickets there are, but I would imagine it's going to sell out. Hey, Jay Dizzle says, hola, Rob, and watching the Watchers fam. Locals got really glitchy for me, so I went to the other platform's question. If Luigi brings up habeas corpus, which he has, can they just change charges to keep him? Or are they kind of set in stone? Well, I mean, yeah, usually charges are set in stone, but they can always change them, right? They can file a superseding indictment or adjust charges, and that can happen too. But, and Jay Dizzle, if you missed this morning's stream, we actually spent time on this question. We talked about habeas and his petition for the imposition of bail. Two things are happening with Luigi right now, at least in Pennsylvania. Let me just do a quick summary. In Pennsylvania, I think he's got a preliminary hearing scheduled for 12/23, and then he has another habeas hearing scheduled for 12/30. And at that hearing, we're going to talk two things, habeas and bail. Habeas is a claim that the government doesn't have lawful reason for holding him in custody. So it's a claim against the jailers, and they come in and say, we got a prima facie case for the charges. If he can't overcome that, then they can keep him in. So they'll very likely win that. Because it's not murder. It's just gun charges and fake ID charges. So they'll probably win that. Then the next question will be, can they keep him? Does he deserve bail? Or can the charges stick and hold him in incarceration? But does he deserve bail? So they're asking for that as well. And the idea with bail is you have a presumption of innocence, and you should have the least restrictive mechanisms and means to keep the person in custody. And do they have to keep him in bond in order to achieve those goals? Or keep him in custody in order to achieve those goals? That's in Pennsylvania. Then in New York, they're presenting evidence to a grand jury and seeking extradition. So, if he was ever going to be released from Pennsylvania for whatever reason, New York would hit him with charges and say, we're now extraditing you. The governor would sign a warrant and he'd be... So, he's going to be held. He's going to be held. So I don't think that they would need to change the charges just to keep him in other words. which I think is the ultimate question. Thank you, Jay Dizzle. Thank you for being a locals member and for asking. And we did go into the actual form this morning and added a lot more detail to it. Hey, Jack is here. What's up, Jack? Jack in the house. Thank you, Jack. 5 membos coming in. Sunshine is here. Line wife Sharon Lathan is here. Joel and Kathy Davison, along with May May. Gifted membos, courtesy of the one and only Jack Mack in the house. Happy Friday. Thank you, Jack, for bringing in the new membos. We got Terry G. Welcome aboard as a membo. We'll see you tomorrow on the morning stream. Hopefully you grab this morning's stream. Philip Butler says, what about the gag orders? Well, those came up. Yeah, I mean, and Trump's defense was saying those are unconstitutional. Those are a limitation on the president's duties. He needs to be able to talk about the justice system and corruption within the justice system. And Merchan was involved in that. So that's another illegal, unconstitutional burden on the executive that needs to go. Goofy for Jesus says, if someone gets a presidential pardon, is there a time frame allowed to accept or refuse? Can it be held as get out of jail free card if presumptive? No, I mean, I think it needs to be like articulated for a certain period of time. So like it's not indefinite. It's not forward looking. It's backwards looking. Like you can't give somebody a pardon into the future. Can't do that. So it's not a get out of jail free card moving forward. But you would want to accept it so you get the benefit of it. So like you could turn it in with the courts. Like if you're in jail and you get commuted or pardoned, you want to tell somebody about it, which is what Hunter did. That's how he got his cases terminated, by sending in the pardon. So like you'd want to execute it. And I guess it would expire if you don't do anything with it and effectuate it and the president leaves, right? Then you're out of time. The president couldn't do it. The president couldn't... you maybe make the argument that it's expired, like, but I think still the president can pardon you without necessarily accepting it, right? Didn't Jimmy Carter pardon a bunch of people? Like, do you have to volitionally accept it? I don't think so. So Rob says, the election to president is the largest pardon by the people. It installs a president set free from the burden of the court system to be the person who executes the law of the country. Exactly. Hey, Jaegerbomb says, love the show, Rob. Nancy Pelosi fell in heels downstairs, broke her hip. McConnell fell earlier in the week, hit his head. Our current president is suffering from mental issues. It's sad to see how hard some people grasp onto money and power in the old age. When is enough enough? Father Time is undefeated and will continue to be for the foreseeable future. And I think that it's a lot of people who also are propping them up around them. I don't know if it's their families or their handlers from some agency or whatever, or it's their own egos. It's probably a combination of them both, of all of it. Like, what are they going to do? What's Mitch McConnell going to do? What are they going to do if they're not in Congress? Go home and die? They don't want to do that. Cardinal O'Flanagan, what's up? I wonder if one could argue something on Bragg, using a ruling which is a deceased defendant, possibly construed as a threat. How would he be deceased there, Alvin? It's a good point. Kash Patel, new leader of the FBI, should investigate it. Hey, Rocky Water says, apparently feeling unburdened by what has been. Rocky says, that line alone warrants a tip. Heck yeah. Yeah, man, I wish I wrote it. It was great. It was great. That one was super fun. That was a really fun one. Thank you, Rocky. Good to see you, brother. Happy Friday to you. Voice of the People says, why does Todd have to crap on Alabama? The hell did we do? From Voice of the People. Boys, we were talking about Mobile, Alabama. Shout out to our friends in Alabama. Now, it was actually, I think Bragg brought it up in his motion. He was looking for persuasive authority. So there's no binding authority in New York or in his circuit that allows him to do what he can do. So he's like, well, they do that in Alabama. So he cited Alabama cases. And Todd is like, we don't care what they're doing out in Alabama. That's funny. Alabama. We love Alabama. Sheila Pooh says, bye-bye, Bragg. So long, my man. You are now done. Your final warning for from your incoming DOJ leadership. Uncle Bozy says, you know, immunity aside, Mercan denying the defense to call witnesses and threatening and telling a defense witness to basically shut up is more than a reason enough to halt this insane case in its tracks. Yeah, and then he let the witnesses or the government get into all sorts of totally inappropriate testimony that was never even a basis of the case about like almost like R-ing Stormy Daniels. And finally the judge is like, cut it. Horrendous. Hey, what's up, Uncle Bozy? Here's one. Drones everywhere. Ravicus, backstabbing Bill Barr, says that a whistleblower bombshell. First-hand testimony exposes Bill Barr as the architect of the RICO charges? Oh my goodness, that sounds scandalous. I can't wait to read it. Sheila Poo says, in my opinion, these drones are ours, alphabet agencies. What is in New Jersey, though? Or are these drills for something else? Yeah, it's probably some Space Force bros just flying around. Like nobody even knows who we are. Whatever. Hey, Spuds says, tell Joe the drones are made of ice cream. That might get his attention. Yeah, it's like, you know, a child has the things like flying over his head. It's like that. Just go put Joe out on a lounge chair and just set him out there. Hey, Voice of the People says, red light means it's in operation. Flashing light is to not collide. Don't know what the solid white is unless it means not moving. Drones or sus. Yeah, what's the operation when it drops biologics out of the sky? Hey, Pritchie. God dang Blanche and Bove are vicious. I love it. 10 months as a membo, Pritchie. That's a baby +1. They're amazing. Tony Hey Monk, it's great to see you. Says, fist bump. Right back at you, Tony Hey. Thanks for the dono. Kara Signorelli, 19 months as a membo. That's 2 full babies. Says, we had a similar drone invasion in Colorado in 2019. Interesting. Wonder what that one was. That wasn't Space Force, was it? Shells. Hey, Rob, it's Friday the 13th and there's a full moon. Oh my goodness, everybody should just stay home tonight. Is that right? There's a full moon tonight? Ooh, that's going to be interesting. All right. Well, happy Friday the 13th, Shells. Tanya Karras, it's my birthday, so it's not bad luck at all. Tanya Karras, happy birthday, Tanya. Tanya Karras is our purveyor of Taco Tuesdays here. Always cooking. Sometimes tacos have like lasagna. It's amazing. So thank you, Tanya. Happy birthday. Hopefully you're doing something amazingly well and fun. It's Friday. It's a full moon. It's like all the things. Happy birthday, Tanya. We love you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing that with us. Hopefully you enjoy it. Fred Pedamonte says, my grandfather died in Battle of the Bulge. Man, yeah. Rest in peace, Fred Pedamonte's grandpappy. Thank you, sir, for your service. We appreciate you. Thanks, Fred, for sharing that. Hey, Carolyn Wilson, 16 months as a membo, says, love Rob. My favorite show since the 2020 scams. Thank you, Carolyn. That's a long time. You've been here since the beginning. COVID is when we started this bad boy up. Lockdown, March 2020. Carolyn, thank you for that. 16 months as a membo. We appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Jack Mack says, I feel really awful for thinking this, but I know there must be some footage of McConnell and Pelosi each taking a spill, and I secretly want to see the footage. Smiley. I do hope they're doing okay, though. You're probably right about that. There's probably CIA black ops ziplining through helicopters into people's windows, trying to seize those USB drives of their cell phones. Give me that footage. CIA's breaking in. Hilarious. Thank you, Jack. It would certainly go viral to watch Nancy Pelosi trying to cartwheel down some stairs. Hey, Donald Trump. And thank you, Jack. Very generous dono. Thanks for that. We got Donald. J. Trump is sharing this one. Thank you for being on the show, Mr. President. Says, mystery drone sightings all over the country. Can this really be happening with our government's knowledge? Without our government's knowledge? I don't think so. Let the public know and now. Otherwise, shoot them down. Yeah, it's a pretty reasonable position. That's very reasonable. Thank you, Mr. President. Do we know what they are? No? Then shoot it down. Okay. Thank you, sir. Go get to it. Easy. Very easy. Corey Powell says, we may never see that time again that they claim they're saving. Daylight savings time is more like a time tax, stealing your day from you. I don't even know what the point is, to be honest. I mean, I'm in Arizona, so I've never lived with it. I don't really get it. What's the point? So you get more daylight, I guess, or something? Like, what's it like for you people in Minnesota or something? I don't know. How does it work up there? I know it's, the light's different. I don't know. I don't get it. Thank you, Corey. Hopefully you're all liberated soon. Knox Beerman, happy Friday, all. Just got here, but I'm very excited for Robert and Alexis's new adventure to Prescott. I feel like 2 of my kids are moving. Well, we are moving. Oh, it's going to be great. We're going to just cram a bunch of stuff into this move. The movers are coming Sunday. It's just going to be a little free-for-all. We're going up, then we're coming back down. Then it's going to be great. Thank you, Knox. We'll keep you posted. We're going to be trying to keep our schedule on track, streaming, and all the things. Scott J. Man, I wish I could talk to you about this activity on a call, but there's too much to type. LOL. From Scott J. Well, that's interesting, Scott. Maybe we could, make that happen at some point. You can always send me an email, robert@spotlightlawyer.com, and tell me what's cooking over there, because it's a interesting situation. Uncle Bozy, you got an airplane in there. What, are you flying these things, man? Is it you? Scott? All right, Uncle Bozy. Thanks to you, Rob. We've heard almost every word of the transcripts of that ridiculous, pathetic excuse for a trial under Mercon. I realize that there is an appeal process, but it is slow and cumbersome. For the life of me, I can't understand why. In a case of this importance and the glaring misconduct by the judge and the prosecutor, there isn't some emergency mechanism for the SCOTUS to step in and put a halt to this idiocy. This is not a normal case. From Uncle Bozy. Thank you, Uncle Bozy. We'll see if we get there. Sheila the Pooh, 1,000,000 hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila. Look at this. 10 membos coming in, courtesy of Sheila. Gifted at random. Donnie Danko, Yvette, Larry 20, Susan Mary. We got Henry back to play. Delar Finn. We got Brooklyn, Ellie Summer, Carl Stevens, and Suit in the house, courtesy of Sheila Pooh. 1,000,000 hugs to you. 10 new friends coming in. And Pritchie's bringing in 10 more. Debbie Kennett, Sam JD, Michael Lumovich, Steve, J1 Warrior. What's up, Brett W? Greg is here. S-Car, Dankus Crypto, Sista Otis in the house, courtesy of Pritchie26. Pritchie, thanks for that. New membos, welcome aboard. Hey, says, first live stream I've made in ages. Been watching the following day. Ugh. We missed you, Pritchie. Maybe daylight savings time will help. But thanks for joining us when you can. We appreciate that. Hey, just Rhonda, 9 months as a membo. My membership paused, an expired credit card number, but we fixed it. So that means we've got a brand new baby, courtesy of Just Rhonda. 9 months. It's going to be a soccer player, I can tell. Thank you, Just Rhonda. Just Rhonda also is our purveyor of fine emojis. We love you, Just Rhonda. Hey, Don is here. Don Goff, 5 membos. Josephine Rock is here. TJ Woofer, Lord Castellan, Hannah, gifted membos. Thank you, Don Goff, for bringing them in. We're grateful for you guys. Wendy Ty, another newborn baby. Robert, the baby was born today. We have a lot of new babies today. Wendy, thanks for being here. It's full term. We've covered a lot of ground. Here's to many more. This old guy says, Rob, 17 months here in the Watching the Watchers community, so I guess I'm going to stay. Yeah, first month's the hardest, gets easier from there. And the longer you stay, it becomes like a bond. It's always a beautiful day with a big, beautiful spotlight. Thanks so much for all your hard work bringing us together. This old guy, thank you, man. Well, thanks for being a part of it. It's not a community without you. And I appreciate your support. I appreciate your great comments and your insight. And we're just getting started. We're going to have a ton of fun. We're glad to be here with you, this old guy. NY says, Pelosi broke her hip. The next few weeks will plot the course for her longevity. This is a big deal for a senior, says NY, a doctor in the house. Yeah. That's why I don't want to be too jokey about it. It's like a big deal. Shout out to NY. Thanks for the education. Voice of the People says, oh, now I get it. Fair point. I remember now. As a representative of Alabama, I'll allow it. Yeah, that's what it was. It's funny. Alabama. A little hair trigger on that Alabama comment there, Voice of the People. What's going on over there? Just kidding. Boopsy says, Rob, Did Nancy's fall happen on Friday the 13th? Good question. Probably. Yeah, it was today, right? What part of the world's time zone was it in? I do know she's under the power of darkness. I know that's mean, but sorry. No, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. There was a trembling in the dark forces, and she just tripped on the stairs. Could happen. I don't know. Slappy Oil. What's up, Slappy Oil? Thank you for becoming a membo. We'll see you on the members streams. We got Gail Gentry, also a new membo. Gail, welcome aboard as our newest supporter. Slappy Oil says, I love lamp, which are good, very useful items in your home, especially when you're in a moment of darkness and you seek illumination. They're very useful for that. Slappy Oil, thanks for sending that one in. My friends, thanks for those amazing donos. Let's say hello to our friends on X before we wrap it up and go on over to locals for our members only after party. Breaking news, the drones were Amazon packages or Walmart packages, right? Could be. That'll be funny. They're like, what? We're just delivering people's Christmas packages. James Pepper's here. Rob, the lights on the front of the tree, that's a reflection off a pane of glass. This is manufactured. If the light was behind a tree, there'd be a flicker. This is a magic trick. Well, if it's a dupe, then we're being duped by a United States senator who is recording those videos. So what's up, Danny McWilliams? What's up, James? What's up, Fred Pedamonte? Great to see you on X, my friends. And of course, shout out to our friends on X. John Allen. What's up, John? Good to see you, my man. Says, hey, Rob, I missed most of the stream due to work, but I'll re-watch later. Of course. Thank you, John. Well, I'm sorry we missed you. Just wanted to say hi to you and the Watcher family. Also, shout out to all the amazing mods. Lastly, I wish you that your move goes well and that you enjoy your new place. Me too, I know. Have a great weekend, and to all the Watchers, 100% love, your friend, John. I love it. We should all sign our emails like that. Be a lot friendlier place. We are friends. Thank you, John. Thanks for the nice warm wishes and the Godspeed on the move. We had this one from Ollie. Ollie's bringing in Danny Mac in the house. And Jack loves lamps also. They're useful. I'm gonna use one tonight. Right over there. I'm gonna do it. John Allen says, oh, by the way, ever since Hunter got pardoned, I've been moving a lot of the special powder. You know what I mean? He's been on a huge bender. Yeah, so that's right. John Allen. Yeah, John. Hunter's crack dealer, of course, is John Allen. And so Hunter's now been pardoned for all those crack crimes. So John Allen, Hunter's crack dealer, is like, whoo. Man, I thought I might be indicted for providing Hunter with his crack, but Hunter's good, man. All the crimes. He's totally free to go. All right, and so good stuff. Thank you, John Allen, for those. My friends, thanks for sending in those amazing donos and for being here and for being part of the fun. We are going now to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. And members, we'll be back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time for our members only stream, our final Saturday stream from this setup. Then we're moving. And it's going to be great. Not lamps, lamp. It's lamp only. It's from Ron Burgundy. I got to rewatch that one. Thank you. Thank you, Slappy Oil. Slappy Oil in the house. Great to have you. Okay, my friends, we're heading over to locals, membos. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Otherwise, my friends, we're going to have a whole new scene come Monday. We're going to be up in some, probably on a box with cords all over the place, rigging together a stream back here on Monday, and I'm excited for it. And so until then, my friends, I hope that you are having a beautiful close to your week. I hope you accomplished all the things you set your mind to. To-do list, accomplished. Email inbox, empty. Stack of mail, processed. And now you have some time to unplug, recover, restore yourself, get outside, get some vitamin D, spend time with family and friends, the people we love, doing hobbies, expanding our mind and our brain power, so that we can recover our spirits, restore our souls, and rejuvenate our minds so that when we come back here on Monday, we can get into it again. Because we're going to need to do that. And in order to do it appropriately, we're going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye.